All righty, everyone. I believe we will get things going. So welcome to this informational webinar on the Knauss Fellowship. My name is Chris Flight, and I am the Professional Development and Aquaculture Education Coordinator here at Maryland Sea Grant. As a note, this webinar is being recorded today, and we are going to make this recording available on our website next week. We will also make the slides from this presentation available on our website as well. So if you're worried about taking notes, don't worry about it. We will make these resources available to you. The way our webinar is going to work today, in a bit here, I am going to hand things over to Dr. Jim LaChance, who is going to give you an overview of the fellowship as well as the application process. And we will stop after Jim is done for a little bit of Q&A. You will be able to unmute at that point and ask him questions, but we do ask that you keep yourself on mute up until that point. If you have a question that you need to ask in the moment, don't worry. Feel free to put it in the chat box. I will be keeping track of those so we can make sure as many of them as possible get answered today. I will also, if you keep your eye on the chat box, be posting links that Jim mentions in the slides. So you'll be able to click on those and follow along. After Jim's presentation and the chance for you to ask him questions, we also have a panel of wonderful Knauss Fellows who have agreed to come and talk to you today. They're going to share a little bit about their experiences, and we'll give you a chance to ask them questions as well. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Jim. Jim, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris, and welcome everyone. So as Chris mentioned, my name's Jim LaChance. I'm a research scientist here at Maryland Sea Grant. And way back in 2020, I was a Knauss Fellow, actually, placed in the office of Senator Ed Markey. Thank you all for joining us. I'm excited to share with you details on the Knauss Fellowship and what the application process looks like here at Maryland Sea Grant. So the Knauss Fellowship has been around since 1979. And it's a unique experience for graduate students interested in ocean, coastal, and Great Lakes resources. It's a way to get engaged in a lot of different opportunities in that realm, and in particular to learn more about and participate in national policy discussions and decisions affecting those resources. The fellowship's a year-long opportunity to be matched with a host office in either the legislative or executive branch of the government. And so while there are a lot of options for host offices, and finalists will interview for around 20 positions, I just thought I'd share quickly a few examples so you know what we're talking about. On the legislative side, you could be placed in a variety of offices on Capitol Hill. It ranges from, say, the Senate Commerce Committee or House Natural Resources Committee, or the office of an individual member of Congress. Chris has a link he's going to drop to a video that shares more details on what the legislative placement can look like. On the executive side, there are a lot of agency positions, including various offices at NOAA, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the Marine Mammal Commission, just to name a few. And so with each placement, there's a living stipend, which is $68,000 for 2024. And then there are additional funds, depending on the office you're placed in, many of which are available to support participation in various professional development opportunities. This is anything from attending workshops and conferences, to networking events, to enrollment in professional trainings. Finally, on this first slide here, we just want to emphasize that Maryland Sea Grant and the National Sea Grant Office, we champion diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we highly encourage and support diverse applicants being involved in this fellowship. We really aim to be approachable and supportive in this process. And so please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any types of questions about the process and the fellowship. So on to some more details. So when does the Knauss Fellowship take place? So technically, the Knauss Fellowship runs from February 1st, 2024 through January 31st, 2025. However, we're having this webinar today because the application process takes place much sooner. Applications are due to Maryland Sea Grant by 5 p.m. on Thursday, February 16th, 2023. You'll see that date on a lot of these slides, and we're going to get into some more of the details relevant there over the next few slides. So first off, what's the application process like? Before you move forward, you want to make sure that you're eligible, right? So these are the basic kind of eligibility criteria. You need to be enrolled in a graduate degree program between fall 2022 and February 16th, 2023. You need to be attending an accredited institution in Maryland. You need to have an interest in ocean, coastal, and Great Lakes resources and policy. And then finally, just want to make sure we highlight here, yes, international students are eligible and highly encouraged to apply. And so a little more info on the next slide here on this process. Getting your materials in by that February 16th due date, we strongly encourage you to meet with either myself or Mike Allen, our Director of Research, who also happens to be a former Knauss Fellow. We suggest you do this well ahead of that due date. Chris is going to drop a link in here to our website that has a way that you can schedule an appointment with us. So at this meeting with either myself or Mike, you'll receive feedback on your draft application materials. We'll again review the application process to make sure we're all clear on that. And then we'll just ask you a few questions about your interest in the fellowship. The main point here in having this meeting, this is a key opportunity for you to improve your materials. It's really more of us being available to you as a resource than any kind of interview, although we will go over a few kind of questions. A couple more notes on this part. So you'll need to submit a draft of your application materials through EC Grant, our portal for these types of applications. And you'll want to do that a week before you meet with either myself or Mike. After we meet, you'll want to give yourself time to respond to our feedback and finalize your materials before submitting final versions in EC Grant by that February 16th deadline. One note here, you can submit an EC Grant multiple times, so it's okay to click submit with your draft materials, because once you make revisions, you can go back and resubmit again before that deadline. Again, on this slide, the due date, February 16th, 2023 at 5 p.m. So next up, we'll just take a little bit closer look at the application materials. When you're assembling your application, there are 5 required pieces. So first off, you need a CV that is at most 2 pages long. Then there are 3 short answer sections. You'll want to read the directions for these very carefully. This is the key area of the application where you can really tell your story to the review panel. All the details are explicitly described on our website. And then Chris is going to drop a link here as well. Beyond that section, there is a 1-page max description of your relevant coursework and your plans for the coming year. Given there's almost a 1-year gap between when you apply for the fellowship and when it starts, this is an opportunity to outline your plans for the review panel and show them what you're going to be up to. You also need to provide 2 letters of recommendation, noting that one of them must be from a faculty member who's very involved in your enrollment, knows you well. And then finally, hopefully the easiest part, scanned copies of your transcripts, both official and unofficial, are accepted. Finally, just as we're looking at these 5 required pieces, we really want to emphasize that in all 5 of these components, it's important that you recognize them as opportunities to showcase yourself. You know, tell the review panel why you're a great fit for the fellowship, tell them your story, and really kind of try to captivate them. And so that kind of leads me into the next slide, which is how your application is then evaluated by that review panel. So in terms of how you're evaluated, the breakdown is on this slide, and Chris has a link with a lot more specific details and the evaluation rubric. I'd suggest you check that out. But in short, the CV and short answers are about 65-ish% of the scoring. Then there are the recommendation letters, which are worth about 15%, and relevant coursework and future plans, that's worth another 10%. Then there are additional points that are awarded for what they call overall application cohesion. But again, that kind of just gets at that story, right? So all these sections, again, just an opportunity to share your story, show reviewers why this fellowship is such a great fit for you. Next up, we just have a slide, final slide before we open it up for questions. Just showing the timeline of what it looks like from application submission in February to the beginning of the fellowship. So February 16th, 2023, 5 p.m. Application's definitely in by then. Then your application's reviewed by Maryland Sea Grant, a review panel, and Maryland finalists will be selected. Then the Maryland finalists meet with our director, Dr. Frederica Mosier. In March, all applicants will be notified of their application status. Then you move on to, in about May 2023, the national competition review takes place. So this will then be followed by Maryland Sea Grant notifying all the applicants of the outcome of that national competition. This is roughly in June 2023. Then in the fall and winter of 2023, the national finalists will interview with potential host offices. That's all leading to that February 2024 beginning of the fellowship. So with that, we'd love to just open it up for any kind of general questions. I know it's a lot of information at once, so don't be worried if you don't get to your question or it doesn't come to mind now. There's contact info here for myself and Mike Allen. Shoot us an email. We're happy to answer any questions at any time. With that, I think, Chris, we should open it up for questions before we get to the panel to talk about their experiences.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, if anyone in the audience has a specific question for Jim about the overall application process, the fellowship in general, feel free, raise your hand, unmute and ask it. If you'd rather have me ask Jim the question, throw it in the chat, I'll read it out. But yeah, we'll open the floor to any questions from any of you.
See a question from Glenn.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for giving that presentation. That was really helpful. I guess my main question, just because it's kind of hard for me to gauge based on going through the material on the website, was what level of experience in maritime policy is expected of applicants? I've been in maritime policy for like 6 years now, so I'm not really sure if I'm the best fit for this. I'm not sure if you're looking more for people who are out of school, going straight into and just trying to get new experiences. Just
Sure.
kind of curious what the general what you're looking for in that case.
Sure, good question, Glenn. Thanks for bringing that up. I think the main point here is applicants can have a wide range of backgrounds in terms of what they've done in policy, but the thing that you definitely have to have is an interest in it. And so as long as you in your materials, you make a compelling case for, maybe you've worked more on the natural science side and a little less on the policy, and you want this to be your kind of way to get into that kind of side of things. Write a compelling story for why this is like, the way that you want to go about doing that. Does that answer a little bit of your question, Glenn?
Yeah, that gives me some clarity. I appreciate that.
Cool. You're welcome. Any other questions? Well, my email's up there. Oh, go ahead, Glenn.
I'll ask one more if no
Follow
one
up.
else.
You got it.
I guess the other question would be kind of, is it more that you are chosen for the position than the other way around, or how much control kind of do you have in that if you do get on to the next level? I guess that's kind of.
Oh, you're saying in terms of the matching with the host office?
Correct.
It is, it's kind of like any interview process. It's just there are a lot of them all at once. So you'll, like I said, it's I think on average around 20, and so there's a. It's just a kind of ranking, I think, on both sides. And yeah, it depends on a lot of factors, I guess. And it would be interesting if when we get to the panel, that might be a good question for the panel too, because they've been through the process a lot more recently than I have.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Great. Chris, do you want to go to introducing the panel?
Yeah, I would be happy to. So thank you everyone for your questions. Thanks, Jim, for sharing all of that awesome information. Up next, we are happy to have 4 Knauss Fellows from the class of 2022-2023 here to share about their experiences. So they are in the process of wrapping up their fellowship, and they have agreed to come and share a little bit about their experiences with you. They're going to share a bit about themselves and their experience, and then we're going to open the floor again to questions. We're going to start with Brendan today. And when he's done, we're going to pause briefly for questions specifically for him, because he's nice enough to be here today, but he's got another commitment. We're going to make sure he gets to that. And so we'll have questions for him, and then we will also hear from Nicolene and Amber and Anna, and you'll get time to ask them questions as well. So with that, I'm happy to introduce our first panelist, Brendan Phillip. Brendan worked in the White House Executive Office of the President on the Council of Environmental Quality, and I'll let him explain what that means.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, the Council of Environmental Quality was not a place that I knew a ton about before I started this. So I was definitely going to speak today a little bit to, what CEQ is doing and how that relates to what all the other, opportunities there are in this fellowship. But, first, I just want to give everyone a quick background on where I came from and how I got to being a Knauss Fellow. So again, my name is Brendan Phillip. Chris, thanks for the introduction. Jim, thanks for the details. Everyone put your applications in by the due date. Very important. So I'm originally from Seattle, and I studied oceanography at the University of Washington there. And I got to do a lot of really interesting and fun research. I was helping construct underwater observatories. I was doing marine geology and geophysics. And that was a lot of fun. I got to spend a lot of time out at sea working with remotely operated vehicles. But I started to get really interested in knowing how the science is being used.
I think we may have lost him.
Yeah, we'll give him a minute. We'll see if he comes back really quick. If not, we'll move on with the rest of the panel. But I think I see him pop back up.
Yeah, sorry about that. We had a little Wi-Fi blip.
No worries.
Yeah, apologies, everyone. So yeah, I'll just get right back into it. So anyway, I was really excited about doing the research, but I wanted to understand a little more about how it was being used and how that science was helping solve public policy issues. So I came out from Seattle to Washington, D.C. I went from one Washington to and studied environmental resource policy at George Washington University, which is what made me eligible for a Sea Grant Fellowship. My cohort class year was such that the DC students were applying through Maryland. I'm not sure if that's still the case this year. I think there was a process where DC students also applied in Virginia. But that's how I ended up coming through the Maryland Sea Grant office. And when I was looking for opportunities and thinking about where I wanted to be placed, I knew I was looking for something that was going to do a lot of interagency work and that would tackle a broad range of topics. And the reason why I was looking for that is because I knew ahead of time I really enjoyed facilitating meetings and conversations and convening groups around really tricky issues and building consensus. And so the offices that did that kind of work, at least on paper, were the ones that rose to the top of my list in terms of the ones that I really wanted to interview with. And Glenn, I know you were asking about the process and how how likely it is that you'll get to end up with an office that you are really excited about. And part of the benefit of this entire placement process is that it's meant to get you to the place that you want to be and have that office pick you as the one they want to be there, if that makes sense, right? So it's meant to be a stable stable matching and one that your interests really line up. So I think that's the beauty of this program is that no matter what your interest is and your level of your level of experience, there's likely an opportunity that can give you more, right? And that can fit that. So anyway, I interviewed at a number of places, but I ended up here at the Council on Environmental Quality, which is one of 14 components at the White House. A lot of people know about the Office of Science and Technology Policy, or the National Security Council, Office of Management and Budget that does all the money issues. And so there's this other component that focuses on climate, on federal sustainability, on public lands, on conservation. And folks may have heard of CEQ because of the environmental justice work that we're doing. So we're really working on the Justice 40 initiative to deliver 40% of overall benefits to disadvantaged communities. And so that's really what has gotten a lot of attention in terms of CEQ's work recently. But we also do freshwater work. I'm on the water team, so we work on drinking water as well as marine and coastal environments. And so a lot of my work is focused on marine and coastal resource management, helping run the Ocean Policy Committee, which coordinates a lot of the federal government's activities around ocean resource management and science and technology development. And I think it's been a great opportunity to learn about how these big interagency initiatives get coordinated and how to facilitate these big meetings, how to work with external partners, how to work with tribes on these initiatives. And there's been some perks too in working at the White House. There's events that you get to go to and see the president sign bills or see him take off in the helicopter. So those are sort of the less substantive pieces, but are still exciting opportunities. And I think that just closing out here, I think my favorite part about this role has been, I was surprised in a way that so much of the work that we're doing is really driven by what we're hearing from communities. I mean, you'd think that the White House, because of where it sits, is pretty far removed from what's happening on the ground, and in some ways it is. And that's something I've seen this year. But in other ways, we're bringing communities in and saying, okay, how can we help solve this problem, right? And really trying to tackle the things that haven't been tackled elsewhere or couldn't be tackled elsewhere. So that's something I'm definitely going to take away from this year, is that in addition to all the policy work and interagency work that I kind of knew what happened, there was also this public-facing partnership collaboration work that I was not expecting, that I'm really glad I got to be a part of. So I think I'll stop there. I'm happy to take any immediate questions now. Again, I would encourage you, regardless of your background or level of interest, and even if you don't know which office you want to work in, still go for it, because there are so many opportunities that could fit every level of interest here. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Chris. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Brennan. Anyone have any questions specifically, or in general, but questions that you'd love to have Brendan answer before he's gotta head out? All right, very cool. Brendan, thank you again for taking the time to be with us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And Nicolene, Amber, and Anna, good to see you. See you soon. All right, back to you, Chris. All
righty. With that, I would love to introduce to you Nicolene McLean, who worked in the NOAA National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service. The floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you for the opportunity to speak about my fellowship experience. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to say thank you to the Greater Maryland Sea Grant team for all of your hard work that enabled us and allowed us to have this fellowship opportunity. So yeah, as Chris mentioned, my name is Nicolene McLean. I am a PhD candidate at Morgan State University. And my research is primarily focused on using remote sensing technology to characterize the population dynamics of the Chrysora chesapeake jellyfish species in the Chesapeake Bay waterscape. And I was really interested in how my research findings can be used to impact local change. Because while I was doing my research, there was a lot of concern about the jellyfish, and there was a disconnect between the work that we're doing as scientists and the actual follow-up activities that can be done to improve the experiences of these persons and the environmental impact of jellyfish. So I was really interested in learning how you can use policy and management to support or eliminate or reduce the impact of environmental phenomena. And so I applied for the Knauss Fellowship in 2021. And I was fortunate enough to be placed in the Satellite Oceanography and Climatology Division of the Center for Satellite Applications and Research at NESDIS of NOAA. And I helped to support the GeoBlue Planet initiative. And for persons who might not know, GeoBlue Planet is the ocean and coastal arm of a group on Earth observations. And the group on Earth observations, GEO, is an international and intergovernmental organization that promotes the use of Earth observations to help countries meet a number of international policy framework objectives. And so these policy frameworks include the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, as well as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. And so, as I mentioned before, there are quite a few countries that are member nations of GEO, and the US is one of those contributors to GEO. And so I help to support the US contribution to the GeoBlue Planet initiative, which is the ocean and coastal arm of the group on Earth observations. And I help to support a lot of the coordination and facilitation activities at the secretariat level. So the secretariat is basically an international program office where a lot of the coordination activities that are needed to support the maintenance and sustainability of the activities within GeoBlue Planet, that's where they take place. And so there is a US node, there's a node in France, and there's also a node in the Republic of Korea. So on the US side, I help to support a lot of that coordination and facilitation that's necessary to ensure that GeoBlue Planet's activities are maintained and sustained. During my fellowship, I had quite a few opportunities, as Brandon was mentioning before. The fellowship really gives you an opportunity to gain exposure to so many different fields as it relates to marine and coastal resources. So within GeoBlue Planet, I also helped to support working group activities. So I helped facilitate a lot of the work of the fisheries working group, and this working group comprised of fishery scientists, ecologists, biologists, remote sensing specialists from all over the world who were working on coming up with tools and applications to support fishery and aquaculture related needs. In addition to the fisheries working group, I helped to support the work of the eutrophication working group as well, where the main undertaking involves using satellite-derived data and satellite-derived measurements of chlorophyll A to develop indicators to provide information related to instances of eutrophication and coastal eutrophication. So we're working on developing two anomalies, one that provides information on chlorophyll anomalies on a global scale, and there's a segmented indicator product where we're working on looking at how we can use Earth observations and chlorophyll-derived data to support or to improve our understanding of the occurrence of eutrophication across the world's exclusive economic zones. Also, I had the opportunity to spearhead the climate adaptation working group, where I work very closely with representatives from the UNFCCC. This is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, on exploring ways that we can use Earth observations. And Earth observations, I apologize if I'm skipping ahead, but Earth observations are measurements of the environmental parameters from either satellite or in situ sources. So in the Climate Adaptation Working Group, we're looking at how we can use Earth observations to formulate national adaptation plans that can be used to improve countries' coastal adaptive resilience and their adaptive capacity. We're also working on how to develop Earth observation frameworks that can be used for blue carbon mapping on a global scale. So in addition to those working groups, I also help to support the work of our sargassum monitoring working group, as well as our oil spill monitoring working group. So those are some of the examples of some of the working group activities that I'm responsible for, or that I help to contribute to. And additionally, I also help to spearhead a lot of the communication on behalf of my office. And so I've had the opportunity to make presentations within NOAA as it relates to projects that we are currently undertaking within GeoBlue Planet. And I also had the opportunity to present my own research, which I thought was really interesting because it was a great opportunity for professional development and great to improve my visibility within NOAA. Internationally, I've had the opportunity to make presentations at the Geo Symposium, which was held in Geneva in Switzerland. And I made presentations on some of the Earth observation tools that can be used in support of integrated coastal zone management and marine spatial planning. Additionally, I also made a presentation at the World Bank at their workshop on disruptive technologies in support of the blue economy. Where it made a presentation on some of the Earth observation tools that exist that can be used in support of the blue economy. And finally, wrapping up, I'd say that the most exciting aspect of my fellowship has been the work that I had the opportunity to do in the planning and eventual execution of the GeoBlue Planet Symposium. So we hosted a symposium in Accra, in Ghana, in October of 2022, and I had the opportunity to do a lot of the heavy lifting as it relates to the planning, organization, coming up with different agendas, reaching out to our collaborators in West Africa and all of the other eventual contributors to the symposium. And so that was a great opportunity because I got to work on different events as it relates to coming up with agendas for plenary sessions, workshops, training sessions, and also a lot of interactive fora. So that was a great opportunity. The following week, I got to present and participate in the 18th Geo Plenary, where I intervened on behalf of the US on the collective action on oceans, climate, and biodiversity as an official delegate, as an official member of the US delegation. And so that was a great experience. And I'd say overall, the fellowship was really fulfilling, and I would encourage as many persons as possible to apply because there's so many opportunities to learn and to gain exposure regardless of your interest. So I will end there and I'll pass it back over to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicolene. We're going to keep going right ahead. We will pause again for questions at the very end for our three remaining panelists. But I'm enjoying hearing about all the awesome opportunities and experiences, and I'm excited to hear even more about them. So next up, we're going to hear from Amber Fandel, who worked in the NOAA Office of Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs. Amber, I will pass it to you.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here. So I am in NOAA's Office of Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs, and what that means is that my office is the interface between Congress and NOAA. So anytime Congress wants to know about what NOAA is doing about anything at all, they reach out to our office and we answer their questions, put them in touch with the right people, set up meetings for them. So a lot of my day is spent chatting with the Hill, Congress and answering their questions. So that might mean setting up those meetings virtually, going to the Hill to talk to them. And we try to maintain a really close relationship with them so that we can answer their questions. I have also helped with writing testimony for Congress. So when the NOAA administrator went up and testified in front of Congress on the climate crisis, I spearheaded writing his congressional testimony. So that was a very cool experience. What else? I recently had the pleasure of attending a reopening of a national marine sanctuary, the Hawaiian Humpback National Marine Sanctuary, which was a great excuse to go to Hawaii. But basically, anytime a congressional member is interested in visiting a NOAA facility, we help both facilitate that meeting and we're there to help staff them and answer their questions. I've also attended the reopening or the grand opening of the Connecticut National Estuarine Research Reserve and lots of other events throughout the area. Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. Happy to answer any questions that folks have during the time.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Amber. Our last panelist today, I have the pleasure of introducing Ana Sosa, who worked in the NOAA National Sea Grant Office, NOAA Office of Education. Ana, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ana. I did my PhD at the Institute of Marine and Environmental Technology on biofilms on microplastics. And I decided to apply for the Knauss Fellowship because I have always been interested in policy, but specifically, I've always been interested in science education. And through grad school, I worked on a couple of projects with the Maryland Sea Grant that focused on education. So I knew that that was sort of what I wanted to do. So I applied for the fellowship and I was placed in a joint position. I was lucky enough to have two different offices. One was the National Sea Grant Office, and then the other one was the Office of Education, which was awesome because my job was to be the bridge between the offices and coordinate the education efforts in both the offices. So I got to see two very different office cultures, very different working styles. I got two awesome mentors, so that was great. And to answer a little bit of Glenn's question before, even if you have a bunch of different offices, like at the end, you're not even going to be sure how to rank them because there's so many positions that you're interested in. There's more positions than there are fellows. So there's always going to be something that is going to be interesting to you. And I've never heard anyone being really sad of like where they were placed. So I would say that this experience was totally worth it. And not only did I get to work in education, but I also got to incorporate some of my marine debris work into my fellowship as well. So there is usually some freedom in pursuing your own projects. So that's really cool too. And I got to do a lot of professional development. I got to travel all over the country. I went to Alaska, Puerto Rico, New York, Boston. Like I got to do a lot of different things, go to a lot of different meetings, meet all kinds of people. And I also, with some of my professional development money, I was able to take an ASL course, which was really cool because I've always wanted to learn ASL, and it's such a great tool for equity and accessibility in education. So just overall, it was an awesome experience. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Ana, and thank you to all of our panelists. We will open up the floor now. If anyone has any questions for any of the panelists, if you've thought about it for a couple minutes, if you've come up for a question that Jim could answer, feel free, raise your hand, unmute, or throw it in the chat. But yeah, ask away. We're here to answer as many of your questions as we can.
I'll be selfish and I'll ask first again. But this is for each, and it's kind of a generic question, but it's kind of like, now that you're almost at the end of this, kind of what are you looking for next, right? Because now that the fellowship is over, you're looking for new opportunities, and maybe somewhere that pays a little bit more. I don't know, but what are you looking for next? And are you thinking, now that you've been with the government for a year, do you have like a foot in the door maybe where you are now, or are you kind of looking for something else? That can be for any of you who want to answer that.
I can go first because I already started my new position. I actually finished my fellowship early a couple weeks ago, and I am now the proposal and reporting coordinator at Maryland Sea Grant. So I started working with Maryland Sea Grant. I was a fellow, then I went to Knauss, and now I'm back at the Maryland Sea Grant. And for me, it's just always been about doing education. And so I feel like my work through the fellowship really just cemented that goal and that idea for me to just kind of continue in the path of scientific education, and my new position is going to allow me to do that. But I will say the fellowship is a great opportunity to kind of see what you really like and what you don't, and how the processes work at the federal government, if that is for you, or if it isn't. If it is, then you can totally look for positions in the federal government after your fellowship.
Yeah, and I'll just say one of the great things about the Knauss Fellowship, and I know that folks are trying to take advantage of that, is that you have the direct hire authority, which means that it's a little easier for the federal government to bring you on. And there are some positions that are only open to direct hire folks, so that gives you a little bit of an in. I'll say that I'm looking both in the federal government, private industry, at lobbying firms, state government. So my interest is broad, but staying in the legislative and the policy space. And there are definitely lots of doors open for that.
I can chime in. Great question, Glenn. I wish that I had thought about this when I attended this seminar before. But I would say that over the course of the fellowship, you really get an opportunity to figure out what you're comfortable with. As Brendan mentioned before he left, and the other fellows have also mentioned, there are so many opportunities to gain exposure in different areas. While you're a fellow, there are so many opportunities for your own professional development, and a lot of our supervisors and fellowship coordinators would encourage us to have as many informational interviews as you possibly can. And so after you've had the opportunity to interview with a lot of these offices, it would broaden your horizon as to what exists out there. And while you're finishing up your fellowship, you can also research ways of building your resume and your CV so that, based on your Knauss experience, you'd be a great candidate.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? I haven't seen anything pop up in the chat, but we've got a couple more minutes if anyone else has a few. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. But all right. Well, seeing no further questions, no raised hands or anything, I would like to once again thank everyone for attending this informational session today. If for whatever reason you're lying awake at night, you're like, oh, I can think of that question that I should have asked. Don't worry, you still have the opportunity to do that. The slides will be posted as well as the presentation. We're hoping next week, early next week, on our website. Mike's contact information, Jim's contact information, that is in there. Please feel free, reach out to them with any questions that you may have. If you want to take advantage, and we highly encourage you do take advantage of the opportunity to kind of meet with them virtually and go over your application materials, get on their calendars, schedule an appointment slot for that. We do ask again that you give them about a week to review your materials so they can give you high quality feedback that would really be beneficial, make it worth your time. So if you could submit those, book the appointment, submit those materials about a week in advance, and then have your meeting with them. With that, unless there's a last minute question, I think we are going to bring this to a close. Thank you so much again, all of our panelists who were able to be with us today. Thank you, Jim, for sharing all of that awesome information. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.